Okay.
Just have a good day. Enjoy McKendree.
Yeah, I'll have a talk.
If you get a chance, go to the Publix around the corner.
Oh, yeah.
It's a brand new one. I'm telling you, it is probably the best Publix I've ever been at. But they have like a sandwich bar and a whole bunch, and a mushroom bar and all these other things. But there's an upstairs where you go eat. Huh?
It's for those fancy lagoon folks.
You understand that in that area in the lagoon, there are 2 areas of HUD housing?
Really?
That's what I told Wayne. He goes, no.
In
There
Murata?
is, huh?
In Murata? And
Yes.
Really?
Here, see if I can see if I can show you exactly where it is.
Wow.
And it's like, he goes, they're all like $300 or $400 a month houses or apartments. They are,
Right next to the $400,000 house.
no, they're towards the front. You know where that little mound of, looks like someone did a poop right there, but they put fountains on it?
Mhm.
Yeah, that, right in there.
Oh, I haven't gone down. I'm gonna have to drive down there.
Oh, some of the houses are freaking gorgeous.
Yeah.
Gorgeous, but it's, I don't know if they're up here on that thing here.
They're gonna be building the lagoon like the
The mics are hot. You may begin.
Good morning. My name is Renee Flowers, and I am proud to serve as your secretary treasurer for the TBARTA Finance Committee meeting for October 22nd. I'd like to call this meeting to order at this time and ask if we have any public comment.
We do not have public comment.
Okay. Persons wishing to address the board can do so in either of 2 ways. Email your comments to publiccomment@tbarta.com no later than 30 minutes prior to the meeting start time, and your comments will be read into the record. Or you can see staff prior to the meeting to complete a comment card. You will be able to provide comments for 3 minutes when recognized. We'll move on to consent agenda items. The first is our September Finance Committee meeting minutes.
Point of order, can we take up the roll, please?
Oh, I'm sorry. Thank you. Roll call, please.
Go press it, teacher.
Okay, maybe I can, okay. So we will start with Jim Holton,
Here.
Commissioner Cliff Manuel. Committee, oh, I'm sorry. Okay, Cliff Manuel.
She has them on the committee here, but go ahead.
Okay.
I see. Very good.
Commissioner Janet Long,
Here.
Commissioner Catherine Starkey,
She's out on a call, but she is here.
Count as present.
Commissioner Jeff Holcomb,
Here.
Commissioner Renee Flowers.
Here. Oh, my boy.
Okay, we have a quorum.
Thank you so very much, and I do apologize for missing that part. I think when we started talking about who was here in quorum, I hopped over that. So you have, hopefully you've had an opportunity to review the September Finance Committee meeting minutes. Do we have any questions, concerns, comments regarding that? Any comments, any requests for changes regarding the Finance Committee? Do I have a motion to accept those minutes?
Move to approve the minutes.
Second. All those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Do we have any opposed? Please note for the record, Commissioner Starkey, I told them that you work here, so we read you
Yes.
present into the record.
Thank you.
Information items. No information items. So we have for discussion and or action items, we have before us the local contributions issues as it relates to the local contributions. David, do you want to give us an overview of that, please?
Yes, thank you, Madam Chair.
Yes, sir.
Okay, so this is a follow-up discussion item to our conversation last month when we spoke about the local contributions that TBARTA receives and the idea of developing an interlocal agreement between all partner governments, and also including a funding structure, which includes the 2 cities. So I included an attachment to the board packet, which has several figures on it, which I'd like to talk through. In the upper left section of this page, this shows our current situation. And we currently use the approach where we identify a total dollar amount that we want to receive from the counties, and we divide that amount proportionally based on the population of each county. And you can see the calculations in the upper left. I kind of did the math on that to come up with a per capita amount. So I took the 550,000 divided by the total population, and that comes to 15.82 cents per person. Following that same methodology, I carried it over to the right, where you can see for FY 2023, what the new figures would be based on the new population figures, the updated numbers from the census. Using the same 15.82 cents per capita, you can see there's a slight increase for the counties from 550 up to roughly 565,000, but then including the 2 cities would add an additional roughly $106,000 for a total of $672,411. I did a couple other scenarios. Since 15.82 is kind of an odd number, I rounded up to 16 just to show what the number would be at that amount per capita, and then also 17 cents as well, just to see the difference if we added an additional penny. One other idea that has been discussed is kind of leveraging this idea of an interlocal agreement to show local support for the agency, and then using that to request a state match for any dollar amount that the locals put in, and having the state match that as well. So in the scenario of the 15.82 cents, that $672,000 essentially would be doubled to a total of a little more than $1.3 million. If we compare that to the forecast, the FY23 forecasted expenses that Melanie shared with us last month, you can see that amount of contribution would in fact cover our projected operating expenses, and we would still end up with a slight surplus. Now, this scenario does assume that TBARTA continues receiving CAP funds for FDOT District 7's commuter assistance program. So that would offset some of our expenses as well. But you can see from this scenario that this would provide a sustainable source of funding that TBARTA has lacked since it was created.
Commissioner Starkey.
David, in our conversation, you compared that to the funding for Tampa Bay Regional Planning Council that, and the percentage point that is their, their multiplier. Could you discuss that, please?
Correct. When I met with the executive director of the Regional Planning Council a couple of months ago, I was asking him about how their agency is funded. And they do have an agreement with the local governments, and they have a per capita amount which they charge to the counties, which is 32 cents per capita. So the amounts that we're talking about are half of what the Regional Planning Council receives. They receive about $1.1 million in total from all of the local governments.
Okay. Well, so I think 0.16 or 0.17 is pretty reasonable. And
We're all saying we're talking about resiliency and sustainability. Commissioner Long? I'm
Yes,
sorry, were you finished, Commissioner Starkey?
yeah, I just wanted to say that I don't think the numbers that we're looking at here are outrageous.
so
Commissioner Long?
what I did want to point out, though, is that the regional planning, not all of the government entities within the region are members of the regional planning. And we have been able, ever since Governor Scott vetoed funding for the regional planning councils, ours here in Tampa Bay has managed to really acquire incredible relevance, not only within our region, but throughout the state and even across the country for the work we've been doing on resiliency and sustainability and climate change. And our former chair, Holton, had the pleasure of coming to the Regional Planning Council and hearing about some of the things they're working on, which are pretty extraordinary. So we get a lot of grant money, which has been fabulous.
In our county, we're about to discuss some projects that they did for us on US 19 for
Yes.
economic development. So
And your member is our chair.
yeah, so yeah, so good for them, and I hope we follow that same model. I think they've really shown their relevancy to the Tampa Bay area, and I think we have that same opportunity and certainly want to keep us going. And I think we have some great stuff happening in the future. And I guess the discussion would be, do we want to do, for me, 0.16 or 0.17 is kind of
The difference of opinion.
the issue on the table.
I want to see, first of all, David, were you finished with your presentation?
Yes, ma'am.
Okay, and so I want to open it up as well for dialogue for any other commissioners. Commissioner Holton.
Oh, thank you so much, Chair. I honestly think the local match idea is a wonderful idea to take this in a different kind of direction rather than a recurring revenue. I was fortunately had to attend a funeral at the last meeting and was not able to make the prior one, but this seems something that will be very more palatable to the legislature and to members of both the House and the Senate that I've talked to about local governments chipping in to support us and then having a state match as opposed to a fully state funded type thing with a due scenario. So I congratulate the Finance Committee on moving forward with a very strong and innovative idea on that. So hopefully this will get some legs.
Yeah, Commissioner Holton. And then I'll come back.
So seems just pretty normal to me. I mean, the other groups that I serve on, whether it's the Water Supply Authority or MPO or the medical boards, it all kind of works this way. So I don't have an issue with it. I think it makes sense, and it's a proven structure that's worked around the region and probably around the state for the most part from what I see. So I don't have any issues.
Secretary Green, did you want to comment any or?
I'd have to look at the request for the match and how it would go. Obviously, if it comes to an earmark, it's different than if it's coming out of, for instance, general appropriations or, you know, if it comes out of an earmark, it still comes back to the department and we have to address it, define the budget for it. But,
Right.
So our preference obviously be that it would be done outside of the DOT budget. But I guess that would be dependent upon how it was presented through the legislature.
Well, Commissioner Starkey had her hand up and then Commissioner.
Oh, well, mine was just, I just want to tell the chair, I think some of us, or it didn't register, we didn't realize the city of Tampa and the city of St. Pete weren't helping
Weren't contributing.
fund. So that was, we had some really good revelations at the last meeting, but that was a little surprise for us that they hadn't been participating and they had no issues with it. So that's good.
Yeah, that was a good discussion.
Yeah.
Commissioner Long?
Well, I'm confused by Secretary Gwynn's comments because I thought we were talking about matching dollars from our member partners, right? So guess I didn't understand what you meant when you said earmark, because as an example, if we're talking about Pinellas County, we would no doubt be taking those dollars from general fund.
Okay, as I understood, I thought the concept was that the state would match the local agency contributions.
Oh, that part. Well,
Rather than just going for a certain number, we're going to go for matching of what we're all putting in.
Right.
And
So this is really devised to say to the state, you shared with us that we need to have additional skin in the game and that we need to show that we have broad support. We're showing that by Hillsborough, Tampa, I'm sorry, and the city of St. Petersburg, who were not contributing, but are two entities with large transportation system. They're now willing to put additional skin in the game to help bolster the financial revenues of TBARTA. We're asking you, the state now, since we've found this income stream that can be pretty consistent, can you assist us and meet us halfway? So that's kind of what this.
I have one more question.
ma'am.
I apologize, but are you saying that are we changing our legislative ask, David?
This would be part of the legislative request is
In
to,
addition to the appropriation, or is it a
no, this would
separate
be the
issue?
appropriation.
this would be instead of an appropriation of some flat dollar amount, this would be the financial request to the
It's-
state.
Yeah, so it's less than the previous appropriation.
And we haven't missed any deadlines to do that?
Not that I'm aware, no. I've talked to Ron Pierce about it and he'll attend the policy committee meeting at
'cause he was at our
9:30.
last
So we
meeting.
can talk to him further about it.
Yeah. The feeling was that this might be a little bit more palatable to the state legislature versus what they received and some of the kickback we received last year with our ask.
And I would agree with Secretary Gwynn's comment that the intent would not be to ask the state for an earmark, rather for it to come directly out of the state budget on an ongoing basis in a sustainable form. So we would not have to continue to go back to them year after year.
And I just want to, I guess, continue.
Yes, ma'am. Yes,
The
ma'am.
dialogue. I don't think I would have any resistance in my county to move to 0.17. I just want to check with the other, maybe how do you feel about going to the 0.17?
The difference, for me, the difference is not.
Yeah,
that-
negligible.
Yeah, so I have no problem with 0.17. Mr. Holton?
No, I
Commissioner
concur.
Holton, sorry. Commissioner Long? Do you have a preference?
The will of the committee is what I'll vote for.
Well, I still want to hear your opinion.
Well,
I don't think so. Well, even if we disagree, it's still good to have, that dialogue and comment and have the rationale. Commissioner Holcomb?
No issues.
Okay. So does someone want to make a motion with a second that,
I'll make a motion that we base the interlocal agreement on 0.17.
Second.
we have a first from Commissioner Starkey with a second from Commissioner Holton. All those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Do we have any that are opposed? Motion passed. So this information will be added to that legislative agenda. So when we're talking to the legislative delegation and whatnot, this will be the ask. I don't know if how the others feel, but I think if a short elevator speech, if you will, that could be put together so that for any of us that may be having conversations with our legislators, we're saying the same thing and we're referencing it the same way so that there is clarity in the ask.
Yes. Yeah.
All right, thank you so much. Other business. Now, this is the shortest agenda I've had. Yes,
And
Commissioner,
I'm sorry, just if I could ask a question for clarification. In the motion, I assume part of that approval was to develop an interlocal agreement,
that is correct, because,
first and foremost.
Well, that's what we talked about last.
yeah, because
meeting.
Mayor Kreisman certainly felt like that was something that could be done. And we're talking about the 2023 budget session.
Correct.
I made sure I clarified that. We're talking about the 2023 budget, so.
Well, hang on a second. Is this not the ask for this legislative?
Yeah, but from the cities, for their budgets. This is the ask.
Yeah.
from-
Oh, yeah, right,
This is
right.
the ask from the legislature, but for the cities.
Right.
That.
We've
because
already
they-
done our budgets.
Right, that's
Yeah.
what I was sharing with David. Everybody's
Yeah.
already done their budget, so to ask them to do this now, they'd have to certainly go into any reserves
Yeah.
because they've already set their millage rates and whatnot. But I just wanted to bring that in for clarification. So yes, Mayor Kreisman thought that that was more than palatable for the city of St. Pete and the representative from Tampa. Mayor Jane Castor wasn't there, but she sent a representative. He also felt like that was more than palatable, and I don't believe we've gotten any dissension since then.
Madam Chair.
Yes, Commissioner Long.
Have we actually spoken to Mayor Castor or her chief of staff, John Bennett?
I spoke to a member of her staff and talked to him. He's the head of the mobility department, and talked to him about this concept and did get his input on it. He indicated he was going to brief Mayor Castor on it personally. I reached out to Mayor Castor's office to try to schedule a meeting with her directly and was unable to do so prior to today. But we will still, make requests and make sure that she's aware and informed of what we're talking about here.
Well, I bring that up because those of us that have been on this board for quite some time, the city of Tampa has been less than, supportive in terms of the attendance on this board and the decisions that we've made. So,
Well, she did send her, we made that motion and we passed it saying that the mayors
Her
of those cities
representative,
could
yeah.
send their representative, and she sent her representative, and he was engaged during the conversation.
I thought it was this one.
Yeah.
John,
John
Councilman John
Dingfelder.
Dingfelder.
That's right, he was
Yeah,
there.
he was in support of this and.
Yeah.
Yeah,
Yeah.
so
Good.
I think that's safe enough to move forward, and certainly once you draft a potential agreement, that if there are any questions or concerns, we can have that dialogue and conversation. And I would have hoped that by her hearing it, if she was really opposed or had any grave concerns, that somebody certainly would have reached out by now.
Yeah.
But that's never to take for granted in the political arena. But nonetheless, thank you for bringing that up.
Okay.
And the same goes for St. Pete.
Mhm. And we are hopeful that they will continue. If they can't make it, that they continue to send their representatives,
Yeah.
because we really want them at the
We have a
table.
new administration coming anyway.
Yeah.
Correct. I did have the same conversation with the city of St. Pete and a member of Mayor Kreisman's staff. And I think we do anticipate representatives from both cities to be at the full board meeting at 10 o'clock this morning.
Yeah. So we do have a motion with a second on the table. We've already passed it. Everybody voted. All right, fabulous, fantastic. Other business, because I only had that one item. Yes, Commissioner.
I just want to say, and I might have mentioned this already, but I had the discussion with my county administrator about starting to squirrel away money for BRT. And so we will have that discussion again, but we're gonna, I think our plan going forward is to start putting some money in a kitty for that, so that when our bill comes, we're not, oh my gosh, we have to raise taxes, but we're gonna go ahead and start preparing for that, because we're very hopeful we're gonna get something going. We have this, as you're aware, this Moffitt Cancer Campus coming, 775 acres, 165,000 jobs they expect. And all the stuff that's gonna go with that. And so we know that we need to be thinking proactively about being prepared, because we don't have the big road network that a lot of the other counties have because of the well fields. We have limited major roads, so we really want and are going to need something in place, and maybe a couple of things in the future. So we're going to start being prepared financially.
That medical complex is gonna be fabulous.
Yeah.
What's BRT for the newbies?
Bus rapid transit.
Oh, what we talked about. Okay.
Yeah.
I didn't get the acronym yet. All right.
And you know,
I had to
what?
think
There's
about
a lot of
it. I wasn't sure if I said it.
Yeah, and you know what, maybe we should think about that. I know I serve on several committees where we just throw out acronyms and people are like, so maybe we should try to say the whole word and then BRT or.
Yeah.
Until we, because it is difficult and we want to make
Madam Chair, why don't we ask the staff to come up with
a
a
list of
glossary
Yeah.
of
That's a good
You
idea.
know,
We could keep it in our
Acronyms.
acronyms, because it is very foreign to new people when they come on the board. And some of us forget some of the, especially when you start talking about the federal stuff.
Yeah.
Yeah. Especially when you hear from some of the lobbyists too, they start
Oh,
rattling it
yeah.
off. And yeah, it's great.
I
Thank
think
you.
that-
And we do apologize.
No, no worries. I'm used to the acronym world. I just,
Yes,
so you hear it the first time, you're not gonna get, and then where are we talking about for I know I've heard about the Cancer Research Park before, but what's the actual?
It's at the intersection of the Sun Coast and Ridge Road in the
Oh, okay.
southeastern corner.
Hey, thank you guys for building that road. It's gonna make it easy for Hernando people to get there.
Yeah,
Appreciate it.
yeah. We think you're gonna use the road a lot. David's.
David.
Yes, one more item for the good of the committee. Back in May of 2020, and this is for those who may not have been here at the time, the board approved a line of credit with Pilot Bank in the amount of $300,000. The line of credit was structured as a 2-year agreement and had an option to renew. And it also included a requirement to open and maintain a deposit account at Pilot Bank with a minimum $50,000 balance at all times. In June of this year, Pilot Bank announced that they will be merging with and into Lake Michigan Credit Union with an anticipated closing date before the end of the calendar year 2021. Those funds in our checking account with Pilot Bank are classified as public funds and must be deposited at a Florida qualified public depository. And under under Florida law, credit unions are not currently eligible to become a qualified public depository. So Pilot Bank reached out to us earlier this week and asked that we move those funds into a qualified account. This merger will not impact our line of credit at all, but the line is currently set up to deposit funds into the checking account that we've got with Pilot Bank. So they just ask when we move those funds that we provide them the account information and the routing instructions so they can link the line of credit to the new account. Our primary account is with SunTrust, which would qualify. So our intent is just to shift the funds from Pilot into an account at SunTrust. It's not a problem. This is nothing the board needs to vote on. I just wanted to share it with you for awareness purposes.
Thank you. And thank you for sharing that information with me in advance. Any questions? Just an information item. Is there anything else for the good of the order?
I'd like to welcome our new member.
We do that in, we
Commissioner
got that
Overman.
coming up, yeah. But it's on the 10 o'clock agenda.
Yeah, but we'll welcome you at the finance early. Yes, welcome. Thank you so much for joining our lovely family, where we talk about roads, highways, trains, and rails,
And air taxis.
and air taxis, yeah, and gondolas. We'll be flying pretty soon. All right, with no additional business to come before this body, the Finance Committee meeting is adjourned. Thank you all so very much for coming.
Thank you.
Good morning. We're going to roll right into the policy/legislative committee. So I'm going to call that to order. So now's the time for, do we have to do roll call? That's not on here, you know. I need my, I follow this, and if it's not on here, it's not happening. So roll call.
Come up here, there you go.
All right, there we go. Okay, we have Jim Holton,
Here?
Let me know.
Commissioner Starkey,
Here.
Commissioner Janet Long,
Here.
Commissioner Jeff Holcomb,
Here.
Commissioner Renee Flowers.
Here.
All right, and we do have a quorum.
Okay, well, did they call your name?
Yeah.
Oh, okay, I missed that. All right, now's the time for public comment. Persons wishing to address the board can do so in either of two ways. Email your comments to publiccomment@tbarta.com no later than 30 minutes prior to the meeting start time, and your comments will be read into the record. Or see staff prior to the meeting to complete a comment card, and you'll be able to provide comment for 3 minutes when recognized. At this time, we are going to take up the consent agenda items. Members, do we have any comment on the consent agenda? I mean, on the, minutes.
No.
Move to approve.
Second.
All right, all in favor of approving the minutes, say aye. Aye. Opposed? Okay, now we're gonna move on to information items. All right, and now we will move on to the federal legislative update, and I already said good morning to Harry by phone. Morning, Harry and Steve.
Morning, Madam Chair. Steve Palmer and I are on this morning. Good to see you all this morning.
See you
I think
both.
we have a quick update for you. I think since the last time we spoke in September, Congress has extended the operations of the federal government through December 3rd, so continue without interruption, and also extended the federal highway program. Steve's going to talk about that a little bit through the end of this month. So Steve's going to give you his prognostication on what's going to happen with the infamous infrastructure bill that's maybe getting closer to resolution. So I'll pass over to Steve, and then at the end, I'll talk about the regular appropriations process and where that stands for next year.
Thank you, Harry, and thank you, commissioners. Since the last board meeting, when we updated you on the infrastructure bill, there has been a lot of behind the scenes negotiations, not about the infrastructure bill, the $1.2 trillion bill that passed the Senate in August, 69-30, had a very strong bipartisan vote. Includes significant increases for transit, for bus systems and for bus and bus facility programs, which is good news for TBARTA. That bill has been held up, though, by House Congressional Democratic progressives who want to vote on the Build Back Better legislation, which is more the human infrastructure bill. And that's where the negotiations have been taking place. You even saw it if you watched any of the president on TV last night during his town hall meeting, talking about how they're trying to negotiate that in real time. Their goal is to get a framework for the House and the Senate and the president to get a framework for that human infrastructure bill, the Build Back Better bill, by, if possible, this weekend. That's their target. They will then try to vote on the infrastructure bill, the traditional transportation, water, broadband infrastructure bill next week in the House. If they can pull that all together, they will be accomplishing a huge amount. There are many people, my prognostication isn't that good about predicting they will get that one done. They've been trying for several weeks and months now, but they're starting to run out of legislative time. So if they can get that done, that means the Department of Transportation and FTA will start to receive some of the funds by the end of this year, and some of the competitive grant programs then will start to flow for transit agencies to submit grant applications for next year. Now, there's a lot to be done in that short period of time. So we're hopeful. And I should say in the Build Back Better bill, it's not just all human infrastructure. There's quite a bit of climate change funding, as well as a $10 billion program to better connect transit to housing. So that would be a one-year bill that I think might be very helpful to TBARTA, where $10 billion would be dispensed with over the span of this fiscal year. There's no guarantee that survives the cutting as Congress is trying to cut this bill from, I mentioned the negotiations, I should have given you the numbers, from $3.5 trillion to under $2 trillion. So it's not clear what will survive and what won't. But they're trying to get all of this wrapped up as quickly as possible. So hopefully by the time of the next board meeting, we'll have some good news that these bills will be done. Harry, you want to fill in the rest?
Sure. And the only thing I would add to Steve's report on the infrastructure bill is not only will there be additional, and we've talked, I think, in previous meetings about some of the larger pots of money that'll be available if and when the infrastructure bill becomes law for competitive grants for transit programs. It'll also significantly, correct, Steve, increase the amount of money available to the State Department of Transportation, and we'll be able to give them some more flexibility to help transit and other programs that they support. So, not only will you be able to compete for more money, but you might be able to get your funding partner at the state to help you out there. So there are multiple good news items in this bill. And like Steve said, the hope is that they get it done. Just parenthetically, and not to confuse the issue, but the Federal Highway Program, Congress, because it expired at September 30th, Congress had to authorize it for an additional month, correct, Steve, till the end of October. So there was not a disruption in payments to the state DOTs and projects, contractors for projects are underway. So if Congress doesn't get this bill done by the end of next weekend, they're going to probably, I guess, Steve, have to do another extension of the highway program. So there's not a disruption at the state level. Is that correct?
Yes, correct.
The other thing, speaking of disruption, Congress avoided a federal government shutdown in September. As I mentioned at the beginning, they passed a continuing funding resolution to keep the federal government open and operating at current spending levels until December 3rd. The goal is hopefully to try and get all the 12 regular appropriations bills done before then. Probably not going to happen. They'll probably have to extend that continuing funding resolution for a couple more weeks. It always seems like Christmas is the driving factor to get these things done. So, but we did avoid a government shutdown. The House, just as a review, has passed 9 out of the 12 regular appropriations bills this year, including the transportation bill, which has the lion's share of the programs of interest to you all. The Senate has not passed any this year. I'm sorry, they did pass 3 out of the committee, but none on the Senate floor. But just this week, they reported out the remaining 9 appropriations bills, including transportation. I don't think Steve and I looked at it. There was no real great surprises. They continue to support all of the programs at FTA that are pretty much current levels. A little bit of an increase for the RAISE grant program and some additional contract authority, I think, Steve, for ongoing construction projects. But the good news is there's money in both the House and Senate bill to continue the regular competitive projects that would allow you to do things like the BRT and other things. So we'll continue to monitor that. Maybe in November, when we report back to you, we'll have some resolution on some of these items. And Madam Chair, we're happy to answer any questions.
Well, I have a question just because we have some new members. So in order to position ourselves for a grant application, what's required from us to be successful?
Well, I think, Madam Chair, the biggest thing is they want to see several things. They want to see that there's a strong local financial commitment, non-federal, I shouldn't say local, but non-federal. So whether it be state or local, they're not going to put up the entire amount of money for a project that the federal government is not. And they ideally are looking for situations where they can fill in the last segment of funding for a project. So in other words, if a project's 100 million and the locality has raised 2/3 of that, then they're more likely to pitch in the last third. They also want to make sure the environmental reviews are done so that the project is ready to go. They don't commit the money and then it sits on the sidelines for a number of years. And then the Biden administration is really focused on some new criteria, and these are for the competitive grant programs that we haven't seen prior to this administration. And that is, they really are looking for programs that promote racial equity, environmental justice, climate change, innovation, and good high-paying jobs. So they are not funding, they're not going to fund a program or project that is just the highest priority for a local entity unless they meet some of the criteria that they see as benefiting, their agenda as well. So it has to be a win for the locality and win for the Biden administration.
Yeah, the other thing, Madam Chair, maybe to add, Steve, I think they're looking for two other things. The ability for you to maintain the project. So if they help you build a project, maintain the state of good repair of the project, that once they build it, that the project will continue to be sustained, and also that you'll be able to operate the project, that you'll be able to run, if it's a BRT system, to run the system and maintain the buses and do all the things that you need to do. So I think, Steve, they look at those too. And just to reemphasize what Steve's talking about, some of the other criteria the administration is looking at, getting people to and from work. That's a very important item. Getting people to and from public housing, helping them, that's been a very extreme area of focus here, is that they feel like job opportunities are limited for underserved populations because they can't get from where they live to where they want to work. And they can only get, if they don't have transportation, they can only get to jobs that are close to where they live. And one of the TBARTA missions, obviously, is to move people between counties. And so to be able to, Madam Chair, to get people from Pasco to Hillsborough or Hillsborough to Pasco to work. And so that's one of the criteria this administration is looking at. And certainly I think it would be a strong area of interest for TBARTA.
Thank you. Mr. Holcomb.
You guys are the experts, so I'm just a little commissioner from Hernando County, and I went to school a long time ago. But can you use the term spending bill? Can you explain to me how a 3.5 trillion or whatever the amount turns out to be can be free, as many federal officials are now saying?
Okay, Harry.
Okay, thank you.
Okay, and that's one of our new members. So meet Commissioner Holcomb from Hernando County and Commissioner Long.
Yes, just for a little historical perspective here, when I had my debriefing with David, I was reminded of the process that we had to go through for PSTA in order to get our funding for the Sunrunner line. It took 6 years. And one of the things I think could benefit this group is if David would lean on that memorandum of understanding that we have with PSTA and ask Mr. Miller for the chart that they prepared for our board. It was colorful, it was very simple, and it had, the different boxes of items that needed to be checked off. Do you remember that, Harry and Steve? It was very well done, and it really shows you a timeline for this is when you, and we got all of that from a trip. We must have made, I don't know what, Harry, a half a dozen or more trips to DC to meet with the transit people. And in one of those meetings, I clearly remember that they walked us through the different steps that were required, along with the timeline and the deadlines that would have to be done in order to meet the goal that we were driving forward to. And I think in order to give us some level of comfort that, we really understand the work required to get it done and the time frame, that would be important, especially since we have a new administration and these new criteria that have to be met. So is that something maybe we could recommend as a policy group to the board?
I'd love to see that.
I think it would be very helpful. Have you had a chance to talk to Brad, David?
I haven't talked to him about this chart that you're referring to.
I'm sure he'll remember.
Hey, Commissioner, it's Harry. And I'll let Steve, because he's done way more of these projects than I have. But for the newer members, I mean, that you make a really good point there, that when we talk about various funding sources, there are formula grants that are provided from the federal government. There are competitive grants that the federal government, you compete every year for things like Tiger or the RAISE grant. They're very competitive. But the program you're talking about, Commissioners, the Construction Improvement Grant Program that you're building, the Sunrunner project with PSTA over, it's correct me if I'm wrong, Steve, it's not really a competitive program. They help step you through the process. The Federal Transit Administration, as Commissioner Long was saying, there's like a checklist of things you have to do. And if you work through that process and demonstrate to them you have a good project, you have a really good chance to be funded. It's not like you're competing necessarily against other projects in the country. You're competing against yourself to get all the things done that you need to get done along the way. And so it is a long process, but it is one that they will help and coach you through. And if you do the things that they're telling you to do, like PSTA, you'll have very good chance of success at the end. Is that, I mean, Steve, did I characterize that?
Oh, that's perfect. You hit it.
Wow. Commissioner Overman.
Thank you, and I appreciate you going through how the infrastructure bill, or the differences between the two.
She's on, she's on.
Did it turn on?
Yeah,
When
it's
you
on.
hit it, you were turning it off. Oh, I see, okay.
Yeah, it's right there.
I can check.
No, that screen there.
The good news is it's red and apparently that works. So, hi, I'm Kimberly Overman. I'm actually a representative from Hart. So, as it turns out. And the question I think you asked was excellent in terms of what the process is, but what I don't want to see lost in the equation was your comments about having the different legs of funding available to make it work. You know, it's both the local, the state, and the federal in order to even get in line to do that competitiveness. So especially when it's multi-regional, we have to, that MOU becomes even more important so that we know and can be best prepared for being able to provide the local funding that's necessary to make these things move forward. Without that, none of the other steps matter. And I think that's what's critically important for all of us to remember when we're looking forward to this, because while we've had more robust conversations at the state level, and thank you, Secretary Gwynn, for assisting us in that area, it still is incumbent on each of our regions to have within our focus and prioritization the funding that's necessary for our local transit agencies to get there. And the reason that becomes so important is because at least in my world, whether I'm wearing my commissioner hat on as the Board of County Commissioner or my Hart hat on as being on the board for Hart, the other hats that I was wearing were the hats that the issues and the prioritization of the Biden administration when it comes to the connection between equity and housing and transit. That's been a drum I'm working on really, really hard. And if that can help us move the needle, by connecting our communities and our workplaces efficiently and effectively, then I believe we can actually create the revenues that create the local dollar match that's necessary, because it really helps our economy grow as a whole. So I appreciate you bringing that up, but we can't forget that. That is key. Without that, we're not going to be able to move forward and compete for these projects in an effective way. I'll stop there.
Anyone else have any questions for our federal? Because I see our state lobbyist is here. All right, thank you. We'll see you later on in the meeting. And while Ron's coming up, I don't know if you were here when I was mentioning this, but in Pasco, we're going ahead and starting to put aside some funds in our budget so that we're prepared and ready to go when the call comes.
That's great. Thank you.
And we welcome Ron Pierce. Good morning.
Good morning, everybody. So just got back from Tallahassee last night. Wrapped up committee week number 3 of 6, which is great. I'm home for an entire week. Can't wait to reintroduce myself back to the family since I've been gone for a couple of weeks. We have 2 committee weeks in November, and we have 1 committee week in December, kind of the last week in November heading into December. You might have saw yesterday, the governor's going to call a special session, which the details haven't been quite worked out yet on vaccines. I'm sure there'll be some other things will be attached to that as it relates to COVID. And we're speculating it's probably gonna be part of a committee week. My guess would be it's can probably be the week of November the 15th. If it's not that, would be the last committee week as they head into session. I don't think they're going to do it on a off a committee week. I think they'll do it well. All the members are probably in Tallahassee. 2 things I want to mention to you this morning. Number 1, at our last board meeting, you gave us the marching orders to go to Tallahassee and look for operational dollars again. We've started those conversations. We met with the Senate President's office this week. That conversation went very, very well. We're going to have David in Tallahassee the next committee week, the week of November the 1st. We plan to meet with the majority of the board members and more importantly with House and Senate leadership as well. As we've started these conversations, one of the things we're trying to do is is demonstrate that we can get local dollars as a part of this process and try to tie the local dollars to any type of a state match potentially. I'm not sure quite how that looks like. There's people in Tallahassee that are smarter than I. They're going to help us kind of, I think, craft that and I think come up with a solution of what that would look like. So, but we had a really, really, really good conversation with the Senate President's office, and I think they'll be supportive of, again, on moving forward. We're not sure what the amount is. I need to work with David and his team on kind of what the final amount would be as what we're asking. Then more importantly, at our last board meeting as well, and I don't want to see David's thunder. I'm probably talking about at the board meeting, is I know that David and his team's been talking to a lot of our local governments about some type of an MOU or interlocal agreement that would basically have a commitment from local governments, from not only the counties, but the cities as well, which again will help us in Tallahassee, because if we can point back to some type of a document, say that, look, we have funding committed over the next 2 or 3 years, I think Tallahassee may be more willing to invest, I think, in the long-term operations of TBARTA. Let me also talk about Senator Brandis has once again filed his bill, which was not a surprise, to repeal TBARTA. That was filed since the last time I talked to you, I think within the last couple of weeks. Again, that was not a surprise. David met with him in his office, and he all but told David he's going to file the bill. I've met with him a couple of times as well. He's filed the bill. He told me he was going to file the bill as well. There is no House companion at this point. Last year, there was no House companion, so we'll obviously keep you updated. I will tell you, I do think there are some other senators in the Senate that would have concerns on repealing TBARTA, so we'll obviously do our best to continue to educate them. The one thing I do want to ask you as the committee, and if you need to ask the full board, is last year as an organization, we took the position of not necessarily opposing the bill for us being repealed, but for us to educate members. And so unless you tell me differently, that's what we're going to do again this year. Unless you wanted us to oppose the bill, I will tell you, if there is a House bill that's out there, it becomes a little bit more difficult if there's 2 bills moving in each respective chamber. And we're trying to ask for funding at the same time, because we're at different ends of the spectrum, right? We've got some members trying to repeal us, while other members are trying to get us funding for continuing operations. And so unless you tell me differently, we weren't going to take an official position on behalf of TBARTA to oppose the bill that's been filed by Senator Brandis, but we obviously would share concerns like we did last year, and educate members on some of this false information that's out there with regards to our budget and some other information that was out there last year as well.
Mr. Pierce?
Yes, ma'am.
We, in our finance committee, this board did vote to go ahead and move forward with the 0.17% ask. And David's going to be putting together that document to transmit to Tampa as well as St. Petersburg, and those 2 entities were on board. So hopefully if we can work through that language, you'll have that, to go and discuss with. The other part is I would continue with just the positive education communication, because it's kind of hard to fight 2 battles, and it makes your message, in my opinion, unclear when you're up in one breath saying we want to fight this, and on the other breath, give me money. Only half. So that's me. I don't know what other board members may be thinking, but I just wanted to share that positive news from the finance committee, and then my thoughts.
All right, Commissioner Long, and then you. Commissioner Long?
I'm sorry.
No, that's okay.
Commissioner Flowers, I want to remind you, you said it was okay if we disagree. So, Ron?
Yes, ma'am.
I'm gonna turn off from my.
No.
This is why I disagree with what Commissioner Flowers just said. As a former legislator, I listened very carefully to your comments, and I heard a mixed message there. Because while you're saying we don't want to oppose the bill to repeal TBARTA, we're going forward to ask for consideration of a match. And to me, that's disingenuous, because as I stated very clearly a year ago, we here as board members are here to support the mission and goals of TBARTA. And that's the thing we should be focused on. So you cannot, in my opinion, move forward without opposing the bill that's currently filed to repeal TBARTA. If we're really serious about getting something done for the region, we have to be serious about the decisions we make and just tell it like it is. We are not going to be able to get a project done for this region if we don't have the full support of the Florida legislature, and that is a fact. So with that said, my question is, I heard you speak very, in a very positive way about the position of the Senate president. Where are we with Speaker Sprouse? Because you know as well as I do, that's key as well.
Sure. I think speakers, we have not talked to the speaker about the repeal bill because there's not a House companion. We did talk to his office last year. I mean, I think basically the comment was they would let the process work. I don't think it's something that they're necessarily going to push, but I'm not necessarily thinking it'd be something they would stand in the way of as well. I think they just let the process work on it. From an appropriation standpoint, I think it's going to work out like it just as it did last year, Commissioner. I think the Senate will fund it and the House will come to the Senate position on whatever funding is in the final budget.
Yes, but those of us that understand the process know that if the speaker is not fully supportive, that'll be a trading issue during conference.
Sure, and
I would rather see support from leadership, because if there's support from leadership, there ain't going to be any House bill.
I agree, and I will tell you from a funding standpoint, I think the Speaker's office they were supportive last year because this item closed out early in the budget process. It wasn't a late issue to get closed out.
Remind the speaker, please, that our project to help Pasco is going to help him because he lives north of here.
Yes, ma'am.
Thank you.
In a nice way.
I have two green lights flashing on here that say Vince and Dan. Assuming that's you two guys.
Yes, because of.
And then we got another one over there. So I have no idea which light came on first. So.
It doesn't matter. You
Well,
go ahead.
I was messing with mine, so,
Okay.
because the blinking was throwing me off. I think I kind of been in the middle of the last two comments because I agree that we should oppose it, but until we get to the point where we need to oppose it, I think I agree more with Commissioner Flowers' comments too. So if there isn't a matching House bill, it is not going anywhere. So if it's not going anywhere, let's focus on, our request, our ask, our funding. Then let's fight the fight if we get the matching House bill. That's my thought. But would you just refresh us, Ron, what your recommendation might be, or if you kind of lean one way or the other?
Yeah, my recommendation would be is what we did last year was with no House bill, we did not take a formal position on it. We educated members on what some of the concerns were, tried to address those concerns, and more importantly, there was a lot of misinformation out there about some of our budget numbers. So last year, I think educating them on how we get funded, how we spending those dollars. My recommendation ultimately would be is if there's a House bill and we start getting traction in either chamber on this, at that point, bring it back and take a formal position. We have time, we're only in October. If a bill's going to pop up, I'm assuming it's going to probably pop up between now and December. We could always take that position, during, I don't know if we have a December board meeting or not. If not, we'd have to take a position in January, so.
Right, Secretary Gwynn.
Just had a question. So is the request from the legislature going to be for recurring revenue? Is it just a earmark, or have you thought of where would it be general appropriation, general revenue trust fund, where we're?
Yeah, Mr. Secretary, that's a really good question. So our conversation with the Senate President's office was, we'd like to get some type of matching dollars. We'd love to make it some type of recurring. Obviously, recurring is going to be, there's a lot of non-recurring revenue in Tallahassee. There's not a lot of recurring revenue in Tallahassee. So trying to be creative on what that would look like. We understand, obviously, the concerns. We start talking about the Transportation Trust Fund. I think we'd rather look at trying to use GR versus trying to get into looking at projects and taking dollars from projects that would potentially impact some of our transit partners, such as HART and PSTA.
Well, thank you, Chair. And I would kind of echo Commissioner Flowers' comments and I think Ron's that I don't think we need to really get into the issue of opposing any one bill now, especially that it doesn't have any legs, but really accentuate the positive and what's our new kind of direction here in terms of matching funds and project a very positive as opposed to adversarial position with the legislature. And I think that was successful last year, although the governor vetoed the appropriations eventually. But I think we were very good in making our case to both the House and the Senate. And we did get the appropriations. and the bill just died by the wayside. So I don't think we need to really get into a fight with Senator Brandis at this juncture right now, since he is a sitting senator from our area and ultimately will negotiate with us. So that would be my 2 cents.
And I would agree with that. I have a question. What else? And it'll be fast because we got to roll into our regular meeting. On recurring funds, can you do recurring funds for X amount of years, or is it just one or the other?
It's one or the other.
Okay.
You can get creative on, if it's recurring funding, if it's coming out of recurring pot of money, it's recurring until the legislature no longer makes those recurring funds. Every once in a while, you're able to get really creative if it's coming, especially out of a trust fund dollars versus GR, that you can get grant dollars you can use past a one year time frame. But our goal would be to try to get GR for whatever we're going to do, even if it's the combination initially of recurring versus non-recurring. But I know that President Simpson has had conversations with some of our board members about the importance of having a recurring revenue, so we have to keep coming back to Tallahassee for this conversation every year.
Well, since we are asking for less and it's a committed match, maybe it's our opportunity. And when is the deadline for our ask? Because that kind of came up here.
It needs to be in, I'm working with David to have it done by the end of November, but it needs to be in by December.
Oh, it's late.
So we have a little bit of time. So
right.
Session starts on January the 11th. And you'll probably have some of these appropriation type bills. And again, if it's an earmark request versus being recurring revenue, are kind of two different, issues we're going to have to kind of deal with. So it may end up being kind of an earmark. It turns into a recurring item later in the budget process. Because as Commissioner Long will tell you, and, Mayor Kreisman, that have been in Tallahassee, is there's not as much non-recurring revenue at the beginning of the budget process as there is towards the end of the budget process. So sometimes you can turn a non-recurring item into recurring when there's more recurring dollars that become available as a part of the allocation process. That would be our goal.
Excellent. Okay, if there's no more questions, then I'm going to close this one and start our board meeting. Okay, thank you very much.
Very good. Thank you, everybody.
Okay, and we have coffee in the back if anyone wants some. I am filling in for Cliff, who couldn't be here today. So excuse me as I totally messed this up. But we're going to call to order the October board meeting of TBARTA, and we will now stand for the pledge of allegiance and then take the roll call.
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Thank you very much. And can we please do the roll call?
Right now.
Hello? Jim Holton,
Present.
Commissioner Janet Long,
She's here. She's here.
Councilman John Dingfelder,
Here.
Mayor Rrt Kreisman,
Here.
Commissioner Pat Kemp, Commissioner Kimberly Overman, Commissioner Catherine Starkey,
Here.
Commissioner Reggie Bellamy, Commissioner Renee Flowers,
Present.
Commissioner Jeff Holcomb,
He's here. Everyone want coffee run?
Secretary David Gwynn,
Here.
Secretary LK Nandam. That gives us a quorum.
Did you call Cliff's name?
Yes.
You did? I didn't hear it.
I don't think I did. I think I skipped it. Cliff Manuel Jr.
He's not present.
Okay, at this time, I want to welcome Commissioner Kimberly Overman, who's representing Rrt. And would you love to have some comments for the board? I don't know how to work that. I'm sorry. Am I supposed to do something?
Thank you very much. I'm County Commissioner Kimberly Overman. I'm the Vice Chair of Hillsborough County Board of County Commission, and I do sit on the Rrt Board as a general member. I also serve as the chair of the TMA and the chair of Affordable Housing and I sit on this Public Safety Service Council. I sit on a lot of boards. But one of my passions has been transportation and marrying that with housing in order to build strong communities and economic growth in our area. We don't have a problem with population growth. I think we have the solutions in this board and this effort, along with the other boards that I serve on providing great services to the residents of all of our region.
Enter your meeting ID followed by. That's not me.
That wasn't me either. And I look forward to working with all of you on that. Thank you very
Wonderful.
much.
Wonderful. We're happy to have you. And I think I've been saying your last name wrong. So can you say it again?
They have to hit the button to make it turn, so, okay, you're on.
Okay, good. It's Overman.
Overman. I've been
And you
saying
can say it
Overman.
however you say it,
Overman.
but it's Overman. So
Overman. So there's an accent on the last.
Thank you very much.
Okay. Well, we were supposed to roll into awards and recognition for our former member, Rich McLean, but I don't see him.
I do not see him. We expected him here this morning, but unfortunately, he has not made it here yet.
Okay, so we can do that when he comes?
Certainly.
All right. So moving on to 5 awards. Oh, no, we already did that one. Number 6, consent agenda items, September board meeting minutes. Members, any questions on the minutes? Seeing none, I'll entertain a motion. In a second. All in favor? Aye. Opposed? All right. We're on to number 7, draft meeting schedule.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Enclosed in your board packet is a draft calendar for 2022. This is for your review, not to be voted on at this point in time, but just wanted to provide it to you to take a look at. We followed the same approach for next year as we did for this year. We scheduled 9 meetings with 3 off months, those being March, June, and December. We followed the same process whereby all of our committee meetings would be held at the same time as our board meetings. So all of the meetings, same date at 9 o'clock, 9:30, and 10 o'clock. And we have scheduled at least 1 meeting in each of the 5 counties with confirmed locations identified for Hernando, Pinellas, and Pasco. And now also Manatee County has moved their meetings back to their government center. We've not yet been able to confirm meeting locations for Hillsborough, but obviously we'll do so as we near those particular meeting dates. Again, this is for your review. We will bring this back to the board to adopt at the November board meeting next month.
Wonderful. Any questions on the calendar? All right, we will move on to 7B, Commute Tampa Bay Update by Kenneth Bowden.
Good morning, board. I have a very short report, but we have a very busy schedule coming up. Mobility Week, which is organized by FDOT and is run statewide, runs from October 29th through November 5th. Our region, Tampa Bay, will host the Gulf Coast Safe Street Summit. And this is organized by Forward Pinellas. The event runs from November 2nd through November 4th. It's a hybrid event, so there's a virtual component to that, and there will be events scheduled at this. I just thought I'd mention that on the TBARTA staff, I'll be presenting on November 2nd, as well as Chris Jadek. We also have a Bike from Work Day event that is organized by the Sarasota Manatee MPO. And we're working on securing an event at Manatee Memorial Hospital for November 2nd. There is the Bike Walk Tampa Bay Virtual Summit as well, which caps off Mobility Week. And that is again on November 5th, Friday, November 5th. Coinciding with that, Manatee County has a car-free day that they've organized. And so we'll be joining them, I'll be joining them at that event. And capping all of this off is the Florida Love to Ride Challenge, which is again organized by FDOT, which runs from October 29th to November 30th. And that's the end of my presentation.
I have a question. What is the Florida Love to Ride Challenge? I'm not familiar with that.
It's a bicycle challenge that encourages residents all over Florida to participate in bicycling. And we use this as a way to engage our employers around our region as well.
Nice. Okay, any questions for Mr. Bowden? Okay, thank you very much.
Thank
We
you.
will move on to C, RRT project update by Brian.
Thank you. Brian Carl, Principal Mayor. Give you an update on the RRT study. Commissioner Holcomb, we were talking earlier about the alphabet soup of acronyms. Well, here's another acronym for you, RRT, Regional Rapid Transit. We've reached another important step in the study, and that is requesting what's called a class of action from the Federal Transit Administration. The class of action refers to the level of environmental analysis that the federal government requires of projects. And there's basically three levels. You have categorical exclusion, environmental assessment, and environmental impact statement. A categorical exclusion is the least extensive, and environmental impact statement is the most extensive. In order for FTA to make that class of action determination, they ask transit agencies to submit what's called a Nepa checklist. There's another acronym for you, NEPA, National Environmental Policy Act, that basically gives them background information about your project. We had a meeting with FTA Region 4 about 2 weeks ago, and we've already informally discussed with them that background information on the project so they know it's coming. We're going to actually be submitting our formal NEPA checklist to FTA later this afternoon after the board meeting. Once they receive it, FTA has 45 days to do their review. So if they take the maximum time, what that means is we'll get an answer back from them around the end of December on what our class of action is. Once we know that, from that point to the end of the study, WSP will be focused on doing the environmental analysis. What we are hoping for is to get what's called a documented categorical exclusion. If we get that class of action, WSP feels that we could probably have our draft environmental document in early summer of 2022. That's the 275 RRT update. I can also give you an update on the US 19 RRT study. Work has gotten underway on the US 19 RRT feasibility study. The study, as the name implies, this is a study that is going to look at the feasibility of applying the RRT concept to US 19 in Pinellas and Pasco County, going from State Road 52 up in the north in Pasco down to the gateway area here in Pinellas County and to the south. The objective of that study is to come up with both
Give us just a minute.
Yeah, sure.
while we
Yeah, let me
get her
hold, let me,
positioned.
sure.
Welcome, Commissioner Kemp.
Thank you.
So the objective of that study is to come up with both short and long-term improvements, both to the highway infrastructure as well as to the transit service in that corridor. Last week, we had our first meeting of the study executive team, which consists of myself, Whit Blanton from Forward Pinellas, Cassandra Borchers from PSTA, Carl McKiska from the Pasco MPO, and Kurt Scheibel from Go Pasco, and Ming Gao from FDOT. WSP is our consultant for that study. Right now, they've been focused on evaluating the travel market for the corridor. You know, where are people coming from and where are they going? The next step in the study is going to involve looking at what's the ideal number of stations and where would they be located. The study is scheduled to go through August. I'm going to be giving updates as the study progresses. And we're planning on having WSP come in and give a presentation to the board around February. So that's my update.
Great, thank you. Any questions? Mr. Dingfelder? And hopefully I don't have to press a button.
It'll stop blinking in a moment.
It'll stop, okay.
Yeah, there you go. You're hot.
All right, thank you so much. Thanks for the update. In regard to the, I guess both projects, but specifically on the 275. So after we get through the EIS process, excuse my ignorance, new to this board, but then what?
Okay, so once we get done, normally, what we would have done was we would have done the environmental, and that also would have coincided with our request to enter into the Federal Transit Administration's Capital Investment Grant Program. However, because our project is tied to the TB Next construction, what FTA has told us is since construction is not going to be complete for some time out, you're really not quite ready to go yet. So what they said is go ahead and get your environmental analysis done, but then hold off on requesting entry into the Capital Investment Grant Program. But to answer your question, that would be the next step after we get done the environmental. We have to determine when are we going to request that entry into the Capital Investment Grant Program.
So Mr. Secretary, how does, based upon that, how does that line up in terms of years out?
Well, you look at the different segments of the route going basically down into Pinellas County from the downtown Tampa area would be part of the West Shore Interchange and Gateway projects. And essentially the route would be through the express lanes in those corridors. When you get north of downtown Tampa, that's where right now we have a couple of hurdles. One is that the Hillsborough MPO removed the project north of Hillsborough from the long-range transportation plan and so we don't have the ability to move forward on that at this point in time. So at that point, we'd be kind of stuck to figure out how you would handle it north of that place.
So going back to the airport interchange downtown to over to Pinellas, what are we looking at in terms of the years on that?
So the West Shore Interchange is probably going to be completed around 2030. Gateway and Howard Franklin will be completed. Gateway probably next year, going into maybe 23, Howard Franklin in 24, 25. So you could get across from downtown St. Pete up to the east end of the Howard Franklin by maybe 3 to 4 years. But then it gets complicated getting through the remainder of it. So you're talking 2030 to really have a system that would be express lanes that would get you, say, to the airport, to downtown Tampa, to downtown St. Pete, up to the Veterans Expressway. But going further to the east and north, we don't have that right now in the plan.
That's consistent with where you.
Yes, and so, and to follow up on the Secretary's comments, maybe we may have to decide to phase in the project. It may be, because it may be a while before we could actually do the entire 41 miles from one end to the other.
Question on the Pasco and Hernando. Well, Hernando would come after Pasco, but we're ready. Like I said, we're starting to put money aside to fund our share. What can we do? Can we just get to the county line, or can we get further, or?
That we'd have to look real close at how to do that. I mean, currently the project's not supported by Hillsborough County, and that would make it very difficult to get federal funds anyway. So at some point we'd have to decide how to handle that. But a fallback would be that we could allow for the regional rapid transit to operate in the express lanes, which by 2030 could get you from hopefully downtown St. Pete, downtown Tampa to the airport and to Pasco County via using the veterans. But going further to the north along the 275 corridor, some decisions would have to be made to allow us to progress in that direction.
So an interesting little fact that I learned at one of my meetings that I held for a portion of my district. I learned that last month, Pasco County was the #1 permitter of new homes in the country. We beat out Dallas, Fort Worth, and the Sacramento area, apparently are the other two. So we did 900 new home permits. So, and I think I told you with the Moffitt program coming, the cancer community, the 775 acres, 165,000 jobs. That's going to be people coming north, and we're going to have a lot of people going south. So we really need to be thinking about, and it takes so long to put these projects in place. So we really, really need to be getting things done here. We're all going to be in a pickle if we don't. Any other comments? Oh, yeah, Commissioner Kemp.
Thank you. I have a question about, so when this board voted on what they voted a couple months ago, there were a couple things put in. One is the mixed lanes north of 275, which north of the interchange in 275, north of downtown Tampa. So that has been removed from the TIP, as the secretary said, but as well voted for adding express lanes north of Fletcher Avenue throughout the county, which isn't even on any long-range transportation plan, isn't anywhere. So when you do your NEPA application, how do you do it? Do you do it as the board voted on it, or do you do it as in reality it exists?
The plan as it stands right now, and we've let FTA know about the situation. However, the way we do the environmental analysis is that we do it according to what the board voted on. If that segment, I believe we're talking about segment 7, does not go back into the TIP, then we would have to go back and revise the environmental analysis.
So then the environmental analysis wouldn't have value as it is now.
It would still have value, but basically what it would come down to is in that segment, the bus would have to be in general purpose lanes.
And then what about north of Fletcher, where it's not in the long-range transportation plan, where it's under capacity for decades to come?
Right.
How do you express that?
Well, we do the environmental analysis with the assumption that there would be a dedicated bus lane in the shoulder from Norfolk Bears up to Pasco, up to State Road 54. If that does not get funded, then again, it's going to be the same situation. The bus would be in the general purpose lanes.
Right, but it's not even, there's no lane even on the long-range transportation plan. So, I mean, but you're going to put that in?
We have to do the environmental of that because that was the LPA that the board voted on.
Okay. And so we're all going to get copies of that application. I certainly, as a board member, would want to see that application. And also, I guess the final, I'm not sure, I know we see the PowerPoints of this, but I'd like to see the final written study that you all have.
Well, we'll be bringing the environmental document to this board, obviously.
Okay.
Right now, the only thing that we're doing at this point is requesting for FTA to tell us what level of analysis that we have to do. We're at the beginning of the environmental analysis.
And the only other thing that I think is, because we've had some talk about different parts of it, Pinellas being open first, obviously being worked on. So if you had a part like, and there's already express service doing this, but so you had, well, not express service from downtown St. Petersburg to the airport, but we should be aware that there is express service between the counties, between St. Petersburg and Tampa, through over the Gandy, as well as there's the beaches to the airport as express service now done by PSTA, but is that fully funded by FDOT?
No, transit funding typically is federal, state, and local funds that.
Well, my question is what is the plan for, if you were to phase it in, what is the plan? How do you fund that first part if it's just exclusively Pinellas County? Is PSTA going to pay, is the plan for PSTA to pay TBARTA to then either then go back and have PSTA do those routes, or to privatize and have a private service do those, and PSTA pays the full cost, or Pinellas County?
Well, if memory serves me correct, about a year or so ago, when we had the meeting out at the airport, when we were doing our TDP, the consensus was, of the board was that when it comes to any type of bus service that TBARTA offers, whether it's this RRT or anything else, we would be contracting, TBARTA would be contracting that service to HART or PSTA to run and operate.
So I didn't catch that before. So you have made a commitment to not privatize the service. So the idea would be service that they're already operating, that they would then hand the dollars to you, and then you would guarantee to hand the dollars back to them to operate the service they're already operating, but operate it under you instead of under PSTA.
What I'm saying is the direction from the board was, because since TBARTA does not own any fleet and we have no maintenance facility, the only way for us to do any service at this point would be to have TBARTA, to have HART or PSTA provide the vehicles and the drivers, and we somehow pay them to run it.
But you also wouldn't have resources, so you'd have to get the money from them to pay them to run it, correct?
Yeah, and that's the $1 million question, is figuring out how are we going to fund the operations of the RRT? And I can't give you an answer for how we're going to pay for the operations yet, because we still have to figure that out.
Okay.
But the cost of the vehicles would be included in the capital investment grant application that's submitted. That total figure would include the cost of stations, vehicles, any capital that would be necessary to operate this new service. It's not service that's currently being operated. It would be new regional service, which could be viewed as a first phase of a much larger regional corridor.
Thank you very much, Commissioner Kemp. And all these, I think a lot of these topics are things that we're going to be discussing more as hopefully the project finds a way to move forward, because we need a regional project. Any other questions for Brian? Brian, earlier we talked about a map that Commissioner Long brought up that PSTA used to go through a chart, to go through a process. And I think that would be very helpful for all of us if we were able to see this on a chart form. Yeah, go ahead, Commissioner Long.
So Brian, I think you can hear me. The point I was trying to make is that I've been on both boards for a very long time. And we all know why we haven't been able to move forward more rapidly. That said, it took us 6 years to get the federal funding for the Sunrunner line. And we made many trips to DC to ensure with federal transit people that we knew every step of the way what the deadlines were, what needed to be done, how to dot the i's and cross the t's. And PSTA, for the sake of the board, put together a visual chart. And the visual chart it was almost like steps, and it was very well done. And I had encouraged David to get it from Brad so that we could see the length of time and the work that's involved to get this done, and how critical it is that we move forward with good partners in an exercise of faith that we will all participate for the good of the whole. And when I say the whole, I mean the Tampa Bay region, not just Pinellas, not Hillsborough, not Pasco, but all of the counties involved in this agency.
Yeah.
Because we're close to 50 years behind the times in terms of getting this kind of system in place for our citizens. This isn't about an individual agenda. It's about the good of our citizens, not today, but for the future, for our kids and for our grandkids. That's what we're talking about here. And I think that chart would be a real eye-opener about how critical it is for us all to move forward as one with one message and one objective, which is what we have been asking for and trying to accomplish since this agency was created.
This checklist, do you know if it's specifically related to the capital investment grant program? If it is, because I'm thinking it is, because if it's tied to the Sunrunner, I'm guessing that was the chart that they put together.
Yes.
But I think I've seen similar charts. It's
So you
basically,
know what I'm
it kind of like
talking-
helps you to, this is what you have to do to navigate through the CIG program once you're in it. Because once you're in it, the clock is ticking and there's certain things you have to
Amen,
do.
all day long.
So-
And, you know, it's really sets you back if you miss any of that. So we were just dogged about being focused and paying attention and getting it done. And you heard Secretary Gwen talk about the length of time it's going to take just to complete the projects we've already got on the drawing board. It makes me nuts.
Yeah, and the process, it's slightly different depending on whether you apply as a new starts project versus a small starts
Correct.
project. With
So
small
the
start, with
charts
small
are
starts, you
very
get, you have a
helpful.
bit more flexibility in the time that you have to finish stuff.
Thank you. And, you know, I wanted to say with our new board member from Hernando County, just as I talked about what's going on in Pasco County with the growth, I'm very aware that your land is selling rapidly for development in Hernando County.
I'm perfectly happy to let you guys be the leader in the permit. We're glad to be a little
But
farther behind you.
I know of a couple large parcels that have recently changed hands, and the national
Oh, yeah,
builders are circling you guys.
We're
You can
doing our
have them.
fair share.
Take them.
Yep, and yeah, some of them just built in Pasco, so yeah.
Okay, if we're done with that one, we're gonna, did our guest arrive? No. Okay, we'll move on to 8A, the Citizens Advisory Committee report with Mr. Roberts.
Good morning, Madam Chairman. Can you hear me all right?
Yes.
Thank you. Good morning, committee members, board members. I'm Bill Roberts. I chair your Citizens Advisory Committee. Appreciate the robust discussion about the RRT, so I'll keep my report brief. Your CAC met on October 13th. We did not have a quorum, so no actionable items will be recommended to you today. We did hear a presentation on the wrong way driving advanced countermeasures plan, which I believe you have gotten some information on. We had a report from Brandon Campbell on the City of Tampa's mobility as a service plan. That was well received by the committee as well. Under new business, Vice Chair of the committee, Bob Whitmer, asked if we could devote some time to a discussion about rail as a regional issue. And I wanted to bring that comment to your attention. We had a fairly lengthy discussion in the CAC regarding vacancies, both on our committee and of course on your board as well. We have a number of vacancies on our committee, and the consensus of the committee was that we asked the board members who have not filled their committee appointment. Did hear a similar report on the RRT. Mr. Bowden provided a commuter services update. And then we had a couple of comments regarding TBARTA's intent to lead a CSX corridor analysis for best uses. That concludes my report, Madam Chairman.
Thank you very much. Any questions for Mr. Roberts? Mr. Holcomb?
Chairman, he actually triggered something in my brain since I drove into Tallahassee this week and I took 19. I noticed these, and I guess they're been created from the wrong way driving, these arrows with the reflectors in the middle of the lane. And I kind of understand where that came from and if they are related to wrong way driving, which is what I was told or what I'm remembering, whatever is, I don't know, I'm getting old now. But my understanding and keeping up with the news is that that's happened mostly in the Tampa Bay region, not 19 north in Hernando County and past in Citrus and and, all the counties to the north. So I was just kind of, get a little, is that
Yeah,
something you have the background on?
So that is an FDOT initiative. So most of you are probably more familiar with the wrong way driving countermeasures on the interstate, where we put up the active flashing beacons and the notification devices and all that. But what we found is that there are a tremendous amount of wrong way crashes on non-interstate roadways. In fact, up in Crystal River, one of the Crystal River City Council members, I don't remember if it was the son or daughter, was killed last year in one. And we started looking on roads like 19, where it's a wide 2-lane road. Sometimes people not familiar with it at night can think it's a 2-lane road and not a 4-lane and go the wrong way. And so what we started to do is to put these wrong way arrows and signs at locations where we think people might make that wrong decision, and hopefully be able to get them to see I'm going the wrong way. The one thing we have heard though is from some people that the way we set up the reflective pavement markers was in the wheel path. They're changing that typical so they won't be in the wheel path.
Okay, that was.
So that'll be a modification we'll make.
Thank you.
All right, thank you. Thank you, Mr. Roberts. We will move on to the Finance Committee report.
Good morning, everyone. We had our Finance Committee meeting this morning. Thank you for the members that attended. The only action item that we had on the table was to talk about the way in which we would address trying to ascertain funding from our partner cities. And we were able to share some information, a lot of comment, but come to the resolution that we would look at based on per capita amount, requesting 0.17%. For those member cities. So that would be St. Petersburg, about $45,526.34. And for Tampa, that would be $69,291.83. And then of course, for Hernando, Hillsborough, Manatee, Pasco, and Pinellas County, those dollar values are listed there also. So the vote was unanimous to move forward with that. And we've asked David to go ahead and start crafting those draft member agreements that will be presented to all interested parties. The only other thing we talked about was David had just some information items as it relates to our accounts and why we had to do some adjustments. So David, if you don't mind just sharing that for the good of those who don't serve on the Finance Committee, please.
Yeah, thank you, Commissioner. So this is related to our line of credit, which again, for those who may not have been here back in 2020, the board approved a line of credit with Pilot Bank little less than 2 years ago. That was structured as a 2-year agreement and had an option to renew and also included a requirement for TBARTA to maintain a deposit account with the bank with a minimum balance of $50,000 at all time. Pilot Bank notified us earlier this week that they are in the process of merging with Lake Michigan Credit Union, which is not a qualified public depository under Florida law. So they have asked us to move those funds in the current Pilot Bank account into an institution that is a qualified public depository before December 15th. So we're going to work with SunTrust Bank, which we do have another account with our primary account, to just shift those funds. This change will not impact the line of credit at all. It's just we'll have to provide Pilot Bank with the new routing information and account information. So in the event we had to tap into the line of credit, they would have an account to move those funds into.
Yeah, and SunTrust and BBT have now merged. They're now Truist. I have the pleasure of being a member of their depository as well. So that was all that we had to come before our committee. And please remember that you're more than welcome to attend our Finance Committee meetings if you so choose, just to receive some information, certainly provide your input, but not able to vote as a result of not being a member of that committee. And we also had some information that kind of flowed into the legislative component piece, but I will leave that out so it can be reported through the legislative report. Thank you.
All right, so now we'll move into the Policy Committee report, and I think that's when we have our lobbyists speak.
Just a question on
Sure.
the finance.
Yes, sir.
The request to the city of Tampa, that I will do my best to support 69,000 annually, right? And what, when would you be looking for that?
2023.
Next
Not this year, next year. Because the first thing I said was persons have already had their budget hearings. They've already set their millage rates. So while we'll be utilizing this as information that we can share with the state legislature to explain why we feel like we should be supported, and we're only asking for half. So it will be an equal match, but we also know that this will give also those member cities time to have that conversation with your colleagues, with your budget department, and get all of that in order. So hopefully it'll be supported by all of the members. Good question. Thank you.
And if I could add, Mr. Green has had some discussions with the mayor's staff in support of this, so. it's a good
Question. Thank you.
Okay, policy committee report. I'd like to welcome our lobbyists, federal lobbyists to the committee.
Thank you, Madam Chair. My name is Steve Palmer. Harry Glenn could not be here for the board meeting today. So I'd like to just give you a quick overview of where we are in terms of the myriad of infrastructure bills that Congress is trying to work through right now, as well as just a very quick update on the funding the government, the annual appropriations. So the bill that we care about most with TBARTA is it's called the Infrastructure Investment and Jobs Act. It's the $1.2 trillion hard infrastructure bill. Included in that, and it also includes the 5-year reauthorization of the surface transportation programs. And included in that bill is $39 billion in new funding for transit. So that would be a significant help if it becomes enacted for TBARTA in terms of the projects you all have been discussing today. Again, it's spread out over 5 years. It would take the baseline and increase it by $39 billion. So that would be a significant step. And the president and the Democrats in Congress have pledged in the House to try to get a vote on that bill next week. That would be incredibly helpful if they could get that done. Then they would not have to try, if they don't do that, they have to extend the surface transportation authorization by another month just to keep the Highway Trust Fund monies flowing. The other big bill is the human infrastructure bill. They've called it the Build Back Better Act. And that's a much bigger bill. It started out at $3.5 trillion. It's now in the $1.7 to $1.9 trillion range. They're trying to drop programs from that and find ways to make it acceptable, along with some tax increases to pay for that bill. The one element that's important for TBARTA is there is a $10 billion program, 1-year grant program. It would be for FY22, this current fiscal year, in an effort to try to connect transit to housing. It would be housing access to transit is the name of the program. And it would be a good program for TBARTA. It's a competitive grant program, but it would be very, very helpful in terms of providing some of the upfront money that we could use then to help get the project started. They're working to try to negotiate through that this weekend. You could tell me as well as I could tell you whether or not they'll be successful. They've been talking about this for several weeks. If they're successful, they then would try to vote on that bill as soon as possible to try to keep both parties, all of the Democrats on board. And that's been the #1 bill. But I should say that Build Back, Better Back, the large human infrastructure bill is a bill that's moving through Congress, and it's a streamlined approach where only the Democrats in the Senate would vote for it. They just would need 51 votes, and with 50 Democrats and the vice president breaking the tie, that's how they intend to try to pass that. Lastly, on the annual funding of appropriations, Congress has the transportation bill passed the House in July, well in advance of the October 1 fiscal year starting. The Senate could not get an agreement on the overall top line numbers, so they have a continuing resolution in place until December 3rd. The Senate this week posted their bills online, so they've got something to negotiate with. I won't go into any of the details there other than we will be talking about that at the next board meeting and policy meeting, because that's something that won't resolve itself. The Congress will not resolve until around Thanksgiving, if they're at all possible. So with that, Madam Chair and members of the board, I'm happy to answer any questions.
Members, any questions for our federal lobbyists? I don't see any questions. Thanks so much.
Thank you.
Thank you. And now we'll hear from Ron Pierce, our state lobbyist. And as Ron's walking up, last time we had asked about Mr. Susky, but I did see Alan joined a new lobbying firm. Is he still working with us?
He did. So yeah, as of right now, they're still working with us. He merged with a firm out of Tampa, Shoemaker Advisors, which is out of the Shoemaker law firm. So Alan's gonna be managing the Tallahassee portion, all things state legislature for that firm. So and I think it's already happened. They announced it, I think last week, and it just, it's already happening. That transition's in the process of happening as we speak.
Okay. All right, thank you.
Madam Chair, board members, I think most of you heard kind of the update I said earlier, so I'll kind of give you the shortened version of it. Two things we're working on in Tallahassee for you, obviously, is number one is funding. Had a really good conversation with the Senate President's office. One of the things we're trying to do, and Commissioner Flowers alluded to earlier, is taking some of these local dollars and have the ability to try to match those with state dollars. I think we had a really good conversation about that, trying to work how that would look like on paper. Especially if we can get a long-term commitment, a 2 or 3 year commitment from local governments to an MOU or in a local agreement on, if we know we have those dollars, I think the state would be more willing to invest in TBARTA. Secretary Gwynn asked earlier is, we're looking for trust fund, recurring, non-recurring. Obviously, in a perfect world, recurring, that's what we're going for. And a minimum, trying to stay on GR. There's a lot of non-recurring GR in Tallahassee, trying to stay away from transportation trust fund dollars for a variety of reasons. Most importantly is, as you all know, as we start getting, if we get trust fund dollars to the DOT, that's going to impact potentially some of our local partners, specifically PSTA and Hart, and that's not our intention. So we're looking at trying to get non-recurring or recurring dollars at a minimum. So Senator Brain just did file his bill again to repeal TBARTA. There is no House companion. We'll keep you updated on that. And I think it was the Policies Committee recommendation at this point not to take a formal position on it until it starts moving. Kind of do what we did last year is, we'll educate members, obviously, to share we have concerns with it, make sure that if there's misinformation out there, we'll correct it as we move forward. We're really going to focus on our appropriation at this point moving forward and kind of, as you all said, have a positive outlook on what TBARTA is doing, and more importantly, why that recurring funding and the operation funding for TBARTA is so important. Be glad to answer any questions from the board.
Wow, that was fast.
I talk fast.
Any questions for Ron? I think everyone kind of heard you from your previous reports. So thank you so
Awesome.
much.
Thank you so much. Thank you, everybody.
All right, I'm gonna find my place. Chairman's report. Okay, well, I just have one kind of somewhat interesting thing, I think. So I'm heading to Germany in 2 weeks with my Economic Development Council, and I chair the International Economic Development Council and founded that in Pasco. And I also am vice chair for NACO of International Economic Development. And one of my passions, Commissioner Overman, is workforce training. And because if you have a good job, then everything else seems to fall in place. So we have a pretty robust manufacturing training program, and we're working on some others. And we're taking a group over, some legislators are going. But one of the stops that we're hoping to make is with Lilium. And I was down at the FAC conference in West Palm Beach, where apparently they signed a contract with Lilium. And I think Orlando, Lake Nona has theirs, and maybe you're working on one. I don't know. There's some working in the Tampa Bay area, and we have some thoughts to include our Moffitt Cancer Campus with a Rrt port, because we're going to have a heliport. And so, but anyway, I'll be hopefully stopping in where that appointment isn't confirmed yet. They're right outside of Munich, so just kind of interesting. And I'll get with you, David, if that appointment is confirmed, to bring any message from TBARTA that you would want me to bring. Right? Go ahead, Commissioner Long.
That's exciting to hear, because I think we've talked about Lilium for quite some time on this board. And former Chair Holton will remember that we tried vigorously to have them present here.
I thought they did. They never did? Yeah, they did. Yeah. Yeah.
Well, I stand corrected. That said, that was quite some time ago.
Yeah. Hey, we have new members, I think. And let me ask new members, do you know who Lilium is?
No.
Okay.
I do because of FAC.
Okay, well, Janet, why don't, since you, well, okay, maybe
Mayor Kreisman can share, because you've been working with William, right, for St.
Okay.
Pete?
Yeah, so Lilium's air taxi company. And they are looking at locations to try and connect up some of the major cities, St. Pete, Tampa, Orlando, South Florida. And with, so they're looking at existing facilities or places where they could add places really for their taxis to land and take off. The goal is, from a pricing standpoint, to be competitive with, if you were going to Uber, for example, from St. Pete to downtown Orlando, what would it cost you? Versus what would it cost you to get in an air taxi? And so they're trying to be competitive in that respect too. So it presents a really great opportunity. That to me, every time we look at transit options that don't impact level of service of our roads, that's a good thing. And so this is certainly utilizing a new technology to do exactly that. And so, yeah, they are having conversations with a lot of our communities around the state, and I think have really targeted Florida.
And, TBARTA is transit, and there's TBARTA is transit, there's air transit, there's water transit, there's cable propelled, there's all different kinds of transit, and this is some of the newest transit coming. And there's a couple players out there in the world, but Lilium is putting a big stake in the ground in Florida. Did you want to speak?
Yeah, I did want to ask, I did actually catch the tail end of that presentation one day when I was listening to the meeting when it was televised but anyway, it is an interesting concept. I would actually go to a race game in Pinellas if I had that as an option. But I do also, understand that we have private enterprise that, like Uber and other lifts that have been successful. So I am interested in seeing how they plan on becoming part of a public agency, if that is the direction. So, but I look forward to learning more about the company, because any way we can get people around effectively. But I always am looking for a way of creating equity in a relationship. So how it's afforded for everybody is also an important part of the equation. So I'll look forward to learning more.
Okay, I see two. Commissioner Holcomb, and if you want to.
No.
Oh, okay. Chris, did you want to?
Yeah, I just, so you brought up, Chairman, you brought up technical training, and I just wanted to let everyone know, because maybe some of your citizens might want to take advantage of it in the area, but we had our great governor come to the county twice in the last couple of days. Once with his wife to give an update on her fight in breast cancer. So that was made Fox News and some other media facilities. So it was great to have her there and speak for a few moments. But then Monday he came back and presented us a grant for $6 million to deal with a lot of the logistical issues of building a technical.
Sorry. Well, I'll get Was it something you said?
I know, right?
They were working on that alarm earlier, so someone will let us know. That's a first for me. Yeah, well, they're working in the electrical box up there, because the alarm was going off when they came in.
Haven't been on this.
They're all coming back. What, do we have to leave?
So we do hope to break ground on that facility in the spring. More than likely, it's going to take a year or so to have that building built. But it's going to encompass high school technical education. Pasco Hernando is going to build a facility right adjacent to that. And then also, for what it's worth, the county is going to be building a government building there for our constitutional. So, just another opportunity for folks who may not choose to go to college or maybe choose something different in life to go get some technical training, because you can make a really decent wage nowadays with technical training. And just one last thing, I remember the video we saw last week with the air taxi, and that's really cool. And I love pretty maps and everything, especially from my Navy background and intel. But I think we still have to stay focused on the bread and butter of what TBARTA is probably going to be dealing with it, when rapid transit, busing, trains, train corridors, that type of thing. So
Yeah, this isn't going to be the major mode of transit, but it's going to be.
I don't see
a
him
piece of the
coming to
pie.
Hernando County to take us to Drop or Raymond James or wherever. So.
But, and I think one of the, as we're waiting for everyone to come back, one of the things that's necessary, and I think what makes St. Pete so attractive is they go over water and land there, and to come up to Pasco, to the Moffett campus, they'll just come up right over the Suncoast. So you have to have these corridors, I think, for the transit to happen. That's what I understand.
I would love it, but.
I'm not sure if I'm ready to be, especially when there's no pilot.
Yeah, I'm not sure.
But I won't be first, but I'll probably maybe give it a try. But, okay, we waiting on Miss Flowers, so let me see here. I think that's all I have under Chairman's report, and you're gonna talk about the calendar and all those things under your report. Mr. Green.
Yes, I've already gone through the calendar, but I have some other items to go through for
I
you.
don't think we did in the board meeting.
Not in the board
We did it
meeting,
in
and
the
I do have a
policy
question.
meeting. Right?
We've been in the policy committee. but-
Yeah, and some people weren't here, but
Okay, I can go over the calendar. So we included in the board packet a draft calendar for 2021. This is a meeting calendar following the same approach that we followed this year, whereby we have 9 meetings with 3 off months being March, June, and December. The Finance Committee, Policy Committee, and board meetings will all be in the same day, one following the other. We have confirmed locations at 4 of the 5 counties. Haven't been able to pin down a location for Hillsborough County yet, but obviously will as we get closer to those dates. But we have included this for your review, and then we'll be bringing it back to the board for approval next month for 2022.
David, Commissioner Overman has a question on the calendar.
Oh, sure.
Right, I was glancing at the calendar, and the April 15th date that's scheduled to be in Hillsborough County happens to be on Good Friday, so it's Easter weekend.
I won't be here.
And so that may be the reason you're not getting a, sort of a response to a best location. Obviously, the 26th floor of the Hillsborough building or possibly your location is available. But given that it's on Good Friday, I know it's a market holiday. I don't know whether it's an official government holiday, but frequently people do take that day off. And so you may not find that we have a full board if that is the date certain. So we may want to take a look at that particular calendar date to see if there's a date either before or after that makes sense.
Absolutely. Makes complete
Thank you.
sense. Thank you for pointing that out. Next, I know many of you have interacted with her already, but I'd like to introduce officially our new administrative assistant, Laureen Rodriguez. Lorene has been with us for about 3 weeks now and comes to us with experience as a legal assistant. She's in the process of completing her degree in public policy and administration, but obviously has been a quick study lately in all things TBARTA and transit. And we are very excited to have her on board. So join me in welcoming Lorene.
Welcome.
Next, I want to follow up on the Regional Rail Forum that was mentioned last month and confirm that the event will in fact be held at the December 10th TMA meeting. FDOT District 7 has offered space at their building for the workshop, but I believe there will also be a virtual option for people who may not be able to attend in person. I believe some of the invitations have gone out already, but wanted to mention it in case some of you have not received invitations, but want to put a hold on your calendars. I know some of you are obviously on the TMA already, but hope the rest of you will be able to join us there as well.
Mr. Green?
Yes.
Excuse me, I have a question on that. I thought we were inviting all commissioners, not just those sitting on TBARTA or TMA.
That's my understanding.
Okay.
Correct.
I've been telling mine to save that date. So, okay.
And then next, I want to touch on the CSX corridor and the study idea that I've discussed with many of you regarding best uses of it throughout the region. I've talked to several commissioners about it, those in Hillsborough and most of the MPO directors, and heard a lot of support for TBARTA conducting that sort of analysis. We're currently working on scheduling meetings with commissioners in the other counties so I can continue getting more feedback. But at this point, it looks like we are planning to bring a resolution of support to the TBARTA board next month for the agency to conduct the feasibility study of best uses of the CSX corridor. We'll then work on developing a scope with our MPO and transit agency partners and hope that we'll be able to get an RFP out on the street in early 2022. And then finally, I know the holidays are fast approaching, but we are getting into a really busy time of the year. As Ron mentioned earlier, I'll be in Tallahassee a couple of days during the first week in November to meet with members of our delegation. And then I'll be in Orlando that following week for APTA's annual conference, where TBARTA is being recognized with a grand award for Envision 2030 marketing and communications efforts. For those who weren't here at the time, TBARTA previously received a first place award last spring for the best campaign to highlight transit needs and funding. APTA then took the 91 first place winners from various categories, and they conducted a second round of judging to select 16 grand prize winners. I know we mentioned Envision 2030 quite a bit, but it really is a strong comprehensive plan. We already received local, state, and national recognition for it within the past year, but to now receive the highest level national award that exists is a real honor and just a testament to the hard work that we all put into it. I'm really proud of the entire team, staff, and Tyndale Oliver, and look forward to the day when some of those regional projects can become reality. As far as events, I'll be back in Orlando the last week of November for the Florida Automated Vehicle Summit. Our next meeting is November 19th in Pasco. And again, that will be our final meeting of 2021. After that, we will pick back up again in January in Manatee County. We have no new future meeting topics. So unless there are any questions, that concludes my report.
Thank you, Secretary Gwynn.
Yes, just real quickly on the rail event in December. And this week, we had our executive team meetings at FDOT, and I spoke with Brad Thoburn, who's our Assistant Secretary in Tallahassee, who oversees, and among other things, transit rail. And part of what they want to do in this forum we're having is use it as the first of several regional listening sessions to get input from folks in each of the regions in terms of the vision of rail in the region, some of the issues relating who is responsible for what, how do we look for potentially progressing rail in the region. So I'd encourage for the commissions and others who have people who have, want to participate in that listening session. I think it'd be a great opportunity to provide input to our state leadership. They have a statewide working group that's formed, that's looking at this very topic, looking at the policies, looking at the funding. And so it'd be a great opportunity for leadership in Tampa to provide their thoughts to this group.
Thank you. Did we say we had a location?
It's at the District 7 headquarters.
The meeting is?
Yes, in our auditorium.
Okay. I don't know if I've been in your auditorium.
Is that the 9?
How many people does that hold?
100 people, 100 and something people, I believe.
All right, good.
So that's the meeting that's scheduled at 9:30?
Yes, we're looking at the hours, and we'll be circling back to see whether we need any more time, because part of it is to provide input on topics we were asked to provide input on, but the other part is the listening session. We want to make sure we provide enough opportunity and time for the group in Tallahassee, who will ultimately be developing the policy and looking at the funding opportunities and so forth, to get input from the Tampa Bay region.
David, I'm not sure I saw an invite. Did anyone else see an invite?
It just came a couple of days ago.
Yeah, I might be helpful to send it out again.
It-
Yeah,
well-
who's it coming from?
Well, the hard part was trying to figure out where it came from and why it was there. It says joint meeting of Suncoast Transportation Planning Alliance and TMA Leadership Group. And
Well, see,
I didn't recognize it as
That's
being.
probably not the
just-
right header for this.
Well, that's why I didn't recognize that's why is that the meeting we're talking about?
Well, the MPOs are really kind of taking some of the lead on that part of it. But we're working with the MPOs to put together the program to develop, but the thing that was added on in my discussions this week was the desire to have the Tampa region be the first stop in a listening session tour that they're gonna go. They're gonna go to Miami, they'll go to Jacksonville, they'll go to Orlando, they'll other places where rail is something that's being considered.
All right, well, I just want to make sure that my board members, my MPO members all understand the invite, and I'll make sure that I get that message to my board, and hopefully everyone will. And David, did you say that completed your?
It does.
So because we have so many new members, I think it would be beneficial if we could do it at the next meeting in a summarization form, the projects that we, and the reasons why we're going down some of the paths we are. And I'm gonna kind of jump on what Commissioner Long said, and feel free to jump in anywhere, but, and you too, Secretary Gwynn. When we looked, the history of how maybe we could go back into quickly the history of how we ended up with the, am I saying it right? The BRT? RRT. And because in my opinion, we're not discounting any other plan. There's the rail plan, and now we have BRT on 19 and we have BRT on 75. We need them all. We're gonna need them all, and they take different lengths of time. For me and for my county, the reason why we jumped in agreeing with the BRT that the secretary was working on 75, because it was the money was there. It's our first step into a regional plan, and it's something that hit on all the counties, and we could tag on District 7 funds that were already available. Am I saying that right?
Yeah, essentially, to put it in maybe a real quick summary, we did a feasibility study, a screening study at first. We looked at things like commuter rail. We looked at other options. And what we found was that when you look at being competitive for federal funding, they look at the cost per rider, and they look at the local funds available. There really wasn't a whole lot of local funds available, and the cost per rider, when you looked at the more expensive options, became cost prohibitive for us to go after federal funds. So the thought was to leverage what we already were going to be building with highway funds, like the express lanes, and the potential to add, strengthened and widened shoulders as part of a highway, as an ancillary part of a ongoing highway project. You take that cost out of the federal transit formula, and so you reduce the cost, and the cost per rider comes down. And so was it the perfect system? Would it be the first choice if money and local contribution wasn't an issue? Probably not, but it was something that we thought could provide a very good starter project. But we also think that if the local funding becomes available for things like commuter rail and all, those would be great projects too.
Yes, and we agree with that. All right, let me get back to my agenda. Okay, we have a presentation. Sorry. City of Tampa Mobility.
Yeah, and I can kind of do the introduction for Brandon. This is a presentation on mobility as a service, or what people refer to as MOS. And this is becoming more and more popular in the world of mobility. And if you're not familiar with the term MOS, it's basically a spectrum of elements that are involved in getting from one place to another, whether that is planning your trip, or scheduling, or taking your trip, or paying for your trip, regardless of the mode of transit or the service provider. So it could be a scooter, it could be a bike share, It could be a TNC like Uber or Lyft. It could be transit. It could be a ferry. It could be anything. But it's a platform where you could do any number of different things in order to get from one place to another. TBARTA explored MOS, the idea of regional mobility as a service, about a year ago. And through our investigation and talking to various vendors, we learned that the city of Tampa was already working with FDOT on what they're calling phase 1 of regional mobility as a service. So we took a step back, and we have been in touch with Brandon Campbell from the city and invited him here this morning to talk about what it is they're doing and where they're going with it.
Cool.
So Brandon, welcome.
Thank you. I appreciate it. I appreciate the opportunity to give you all a rundown of what our pilot project looks like. I think as Chairman Roberts had mentioned earlier, I gave the same presentation to the Citizens Advisory Committee about a week ago, and we had a very engaging conversation. So glad to have the opportunity. My name is Brandon Campbell, and I am the Smart Mobility Manager. I wanted to talk to you a little bit about what MOS is, how we got here, where we anticipate going next, and really how the City of Tampa Mobility Department, really a local agency without any direct control over transit service, got to be the place where this particular pilot is housed. So a little context, sometimes people ask me, when I tell them I'm the Smart Mobility Manager, they ask me what that means. And so I wanted to give you a little context for what my office does. About 2 years ago, almost now, we underwent a reorganization as Mayor Castor came in of our mobility department, and we are now a 5-division department, of which Smart Mobility is one. And the way I would summarize what we do is that if it's in the right of way, it's electrified or networked. In other words, if it can shock or talk, most likely it's come through my division, through my office. So we most visibly deal with traffic signals from the planning to design to construction, maintenance, and operation with the traffic management center. Street lighting comes through here, intelligent transportation systems, micromobility, our scooter program, and soon to be sit-down scooter and e-bike program as well. And our right-of-way permitting also comes through my office. So some of those things that are out in the right-of-way that fit that description, we may not manage and operate directly, but we certainly coordinate with stakeholders. So how did we get to be the office that is leading the charge for this particular pilot? If you followed the Smart Cities Challenge by the USDOT about 6 years ago, you probably are well aware that the city of Columbus, Ohio, was awarded about a $40 to $50 million grant for smart cities initiatives. And something that you may or may not know is that we had also applied to be the recipient of that grant. We were included in the final group, the highly recommended group, however they categorize that. But we were not chosen, we were not selected for the funding. And in the debrief of that particular grant program, one of the strengths that Columbus brought to the table that was illuminated for us was that they had a very strong coalition of regional stakeholders that were involved in their Smart Cities program. So what we wanted to do as a city, as a region, was to create something that mirrored that sort of body that represents that we do have regional interests that we want to pursue as a group in the smart city space. And among those things was mobility as a service. And so as a key stakeholder within that group, we decided as the city that we would volunteer to lead the actual pilot for that pillar of our group's pursuit. So that's a little bit of the context for why us? And in terms of what MOS is, I think if you asked a half dozen different people, you might get a half dozen different answers, because it generally is thought of with different modularities that can be sort of added in, whether in terms of functionality, in terms of mode choice, in terms of payment structure. But the critical idea of MOS is that it is a central location where you can go for mobility options. So instead of purchasing an individual trip segment or purchasing a mobility device, you can come to the MOS application and you can get the service of getting from point A to point B. So that incorporates things like modal choice. It eventually, not with this pilot, but eventually could include a subscription service where instead of owning a bicycle and a scooter and a car and a heart fare card or whatever the case may be, you have a subscription where you pay a monthly fee for a range of options and for a menu of choices within the MOS application. It also allows the controlling agency to incentivize different behaviors and to receive insights from that application about what the demand is, about what people are really trying to do in terms of their mobility and getting from whatever point A is to whatever point B is. So the pilot itself is really, we wanted to focus on the base level application and to put together a journey planning tool. And from there, what we're anticipating happening is that we assuming that there's a high level of engagement and success and people like it, that we want to continue going with a phase 2, which is a regionalization effort. And at that point, it may not be the most appropriately led by the city of Tampa. That's where we think maybe we take this and we package it up and we hand it off to another more regional agency. And so at that point, we would expect functionality to be more widespread within the region. And then phase 3, which is a more aspirational phase for us, would be where you get to that potential subscription level and the potential for fully integrated payment options. We think that's going to require a fairly substantial, fairly significant level of investment, and that other agencies, other cities that are larger than we are working on some of those efforts. And we're hoping that we might be able to apply some of the lessons learned and some of the technologies developed under their separate efforts if and when we get to a phase 3. We'll let them be on the bleeding edge, and we will hopefully reap some rewards from those efforts in addition to our pilot. So a little on the history of how we got here, what our milestones have been. It seems like we've reached a major milestone about once a year over the last several. The first Tampa Bay Smart Cities Alliance workshop that we held was back in 2018 in the spring. And that's when we really started gaining some momentum as a region in terms of looking at this as a priority. We didn't want to dive right into procurement, so we went through a request for information that by the time we got that released was about a year after that, the summer of 2019. I was really impressed by the fact that we got 12 different responses to that RFI, because it really, it's obviously a surrogate measure, but it does give us some idea of what the industry level of interest is for MOS. And then not quite a year after that, in the spring of 2020, we were able to finally execute our project participation agreement with FDOT. And I think Secretary Gwynn and Ming may be on the line. And so thank you very much for you and your team's participation in the project. It is a 50-50 cost share agreement between FDOT and the city. We released our request for applications, which if you're not familiar is for all intents and purposes for today is just like an RFP. We had 5 scored responses that we got back. And then in March of this year, we posted our notice of intent to award to a company called Move It. Being the pilot that it is, there've been a lot of lessons learned even since that March notice of intent was posted. We've done some pivoting. We've negotiated with them pretty hard, and even as of this week, we were finalizing that scope document. We're getting ready to send that to council. I think it's going to end up being on the December 2nd agenda. So I put this slide together before the CAC presentation, and it's still a little bit of a fluid timeline. I thought we would actually be at yesterday's council. So I mentioned we had some lessons learned, and you can see in bright red letters that we had initially anticipated this being a white label branded application, which really means that the company would create a clone of the tool that they have available in the marketplace right now, but it would be Are we good? It seems like the alarm has stopped, so I'll continue. So a white label application is basically a clone of their application. I'm sorry?
1 second, Brandon.
Okay.
We keep having the fire alarm go off.
All right, carry on.
If I'm holding popcorn, I totally doubt it.
I saw you jump, so I knew something was up. So sorry. The white label application basically would have been a clone of the consumer application that they have available that would be owned by the city. And one of the things that we were a bit uncomfortable with in regard to a white label application, and the thing that really caused us to pivot, was that at that point we would own and be responsible for, liable for, the personally identifiable information that is generated by this app. And seeing that that's not my division's core competency, and that it is Move It's core competency, and that they have to go through an underwriting process to get a cybersecurity insurance policy to meet our requirements, we felt like that was more safely housed with them than it was with us. In addition to that, handing off the application as we move from phase 1 to phase 2 would have been a difficult process, we would anticipate, with a white label application, as opposed to what we've now decided to do, which is to put resources into their consumer application and to getting additional users, getting additional local engagement with that, and developing further with the again, the modular functionality that is Tampa Bay based. So that's part of why when we posted our notice of intent in March, and I thought it was going to be a 30-day turnaround, and it wasn't. We're still looking at going to council in December. One of the things that they have that also plays into that as being a positive change for us is that they have a fairly robust user base that's already engaged with their consumer application. So the pilot itself is going to be a 15-month pilot. I did already talk a little about the horizon level outlook in terms of how we go from phase 1 to phase 2 to phase 3. And during that 15-month operation of the pilot, we do anticipate getting regular reports from Move It on what the local engagement level is, and how that is.
1 second. 1 second. We have the alarm again. They got some issue here. Can that guy just stand by the box? Wait till our meeting.
They're getting used to it. You didn't jump out of your seat this time. You know.
Okay, I think you can go on quickly.
Okay. Well, usually my indication of whether I'm putting someone to sleep is a little more straightforward. So hopefully, hopefully I'm engaging enough. So within that 15 months of operation, we do expect to have some reporting back from Move It on what the level of engagement is and how it's sustained, whether people are engaging and then deleting or engaging and then sustaining that engagement. And then hopefully at some point during the second half of that operation, we can start probing for interest in terms of who might want to take on a more regional phase 2. So with that, I am done. Let me stop sharing my screen.
Thank you. Commissioner Overman has a question.
Thank you. And thank you very much for your presentation. I appreciate it. I'm curious if consideration of the investment that all of us have actually contributed to when it comes to the Flamingo Fair system and how this program will be designed to interface with an existing regional fair related system that we have made significant investment in. So
Yes. So Flamingo Fairs is in active talks with Move It for integration. And so I mentioned earlier that full payment integration altogether with across all various modes and having this be sort of a central wallet is aspirational. However, in terms of specific applications and deep links and referencing one application to another we do have some opportunities even within this pilot. And one of those opportunities is with Flamingo Fairs.
excellent, because the reason I mentioned that is that, as you have learned, the information, the sharing, the financial investments, the tool, the cyber technology, and the privacy is all a very important piece of that. And we're already working on that on the Flamingo side, as well as some of the other coordination between the various different agencies, correct? But what I do like to see is a robustness of the other elements of mobility that this software appears to offer. So thank you for working on it. And I hope that we make sure that that handshake with Flamingo is one that is solid. So thank you.
Yes, thank you.
Thank you. Yes, Commissioner Flowers.
Thank you so much for sharing that information. That's what I was going to say. But in addition to that, I had a conversation with Brad from PSTA, just talking about sometimes when you're using QR codes or something like that, it depends on the light that emits from your phone and if it can scan properly. And I asked him about going to the tap, which seems to work a little bit better, especially when you have seniors who they may have a phone, but they don't necessarily know how to navigate all of those different functions. And we don't want to improve the system, but make it a little bit more complicated for persons who actually use the public transportation. And I can tell you that, and you've probably, some of you've seen this as well, that going to putting the route information to tell you how far the bus is out is really, really good for those who utilize public transportation as a major form of transportation to and from work. Any type of shared subscriptions, uploading additional funds to your card, whatever you need to do, it really is a way to also kind of take away that exchange of money and take some of that other responsibility off from some of the major transfer point locations. So I really like this, but I do concur. I want to make sure that all of the investment because we just rolled out Flamingo here in Pinellas County. And so, I'm not really interested as a PSTA member to look at trying to invest money somewhere else. I want to do whatever I need to do to make the current system we have robust such that it matches and fits Move It. And I think it will. The other thing, of course, I'm just going to throw this out. We want to make sure that we are addressing all of the security measures that we need to address, because unfortunately, the moment we get something going, someone finds a way to kind of worm their way in and do things. And so the more information that we are putting on systems such as this, the more information that's available for people who are unscrupulous. I said nicely. So thank you. Great presentation.
Thank you, Commissioner Kemp, and then the city councilman.
Yes, and I also had the concerns about Flamingo. We have invested, I think, 16, 17, 18 maybe even 20 million in Flamingo already and are still working out some considerable kinks. And also the tap, I think, is very important because not everybody has the smartphones. And so that I think is very significant. But I also, is there, and I know you've included the other forms of transit, but this strictly the Move It is not providing the other forms of transit. That's engaging other companies to do that. So this is strictly a payment app program that you're talking about when you talk about this. It's not about any other forms of moving people around that are
Yes. Yes, so there are no additional modes of transportation that are provided by Move It, but they do bring together the micromobility and the mass transit and routing information and to a more limited extent, payment information.
Councilman.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Thank you, Brandon. So just glancing at the Move It app in the website, and immediately it pops up. Miami, I guess, is using that company or has used that company for a similar venture. I'm wondering if they partnered with the DOT down there to do that. Are you in contact with the Miami Broward folks?
I have not been in contact with them, and I'll try to follow up on that, though. It may be that Move It has invested in some of their system even without the direct involvement of the city. So that's a question that we can follow up on, investigate, but I have not been in direct contact with them.
Yeah, when I look at their website, it says, New York, San Francisco, places you'd expect, but it also mentions Miami, and it looks pretty neat. Looks pretty sophisticated already. And to clarify, Commissioner Kemp, it looks like it's just a platform that links you into all the other availabilities. Anyway, yeah, I look forward to that presentation at City Council and carry on. Thank you.
Thank you.
Looking at their website, they're all around the world.
Yeah. Yeah.
Secretary Gwynn, did you have a comment or is your light just on? Okay.
Messages stayed on.
All right. Thank you very much. And we're now under old and new business. And we have future meeting subjects there for discussion. If anyone wants to talk about that. What about the secretary from district? Are you 2 or 3? 1? 1, 2, 3. 1.
Thank you, Madam Chair. I do not have any comments. I'm good. Thank you.
And staff reports are in the back. And I guess that's it, I think. All right, so let's get out of here before the alarm goes off again.
I'm sorry, just one thing.
Mr. Flowers.
Some individuals weren't here. Some individuals weren't here during the finance committee. What I asked of David and staff is that if they could just provide the information related to our what we're doing with our ask. Provide like a little elevator speech so that when we're talking to the state legislature, whether it's, our combined meetings or one-on-one, that the messaging that they're getting regarding that ask, the additional asks from the cities and how we're trying to put together that package and hope that they support us, that we'll have the same language. So I just forgot to say that. I'm sorry.
Yeah, thank you very much. And Mayor Pressman.
Along those lines, and maybe you mentioned this, our legislative delegations, our respective legislative delegations, are they on board and working on this through Ron, or how does that work?
Mr. Pierce, Ron Pierce has been sharing that information on our behalf. We just passed in the finance committee today. We just approved giving staff the ability to go back and draft a document that'll be presented to the two cities. So now Ron can include that in his dialogue and conversation when he's talking to the legislators in Tallahassee about our ask and what we're bringing to the table.
But also the local delegations. as
Yes,
well.
Yes.
yes.
And I'm sure all of us will make sure our lobbyists are on board as well, so they can bring the message home as well.
Correct.
Mayor Kreisman.
Yeah, and I've already given, thank you, Madam Chair. I've already given my staff a heads up about the financial requirements that'll happen in 2023. So for budgeting purposes, they can start making sure they put that line item in, because that's important. I just wanted to offer my thanks once again to Hillsborough County, Pinellas County, City of Tampa, and City of St. Petersburg for the Cross Bay Ferry. The service has started up again. I want to also thank Secretary Gwynn and the DOT, who've been a great supporter of the ferry service. If you haven't ridden it, ride the ferry. Let's continue to show that this is a viable mode of transportation as we work toward getting 365-day-a-year service underway within the next couple of years. So thank you all.
Congratulations.
All right, with that, I'll take a motion to adjourn.
So moved.
We're out of here.
All right, move it out, move it out.